Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And of course, in this month, we are celebrating Black Women for Women's History Month. And I want to bring on someone that I enjoy thoroughly listening to her podcast. I mean, I learn something new every time I listen. Miss Danyel Smith, how you doing?
Hi, how are you, Mike? It's so good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you as well. I mean, and I'm kind of feel like I'm living in a fantasy world because I'm talking to someone and I hear educate me on music like I'm in a classroom every time I listen to a podcast of
Oh,
yours.
that's funny. Well, it's nice to talk to you in person, so to speak.
All right. Well, of course, we're going to get into everything with you and kind of your career and everything. But of course, up first, I do something called the Get Off Your Chest segment. Now, for this month, I'm doing it a little differently.
Okay.
I'm actually giving a fact or representing Black history in terms of women in history.
Okay.
And in this month, or this episode, I should say, I want to talk about Sylvia Rhone. Sylvia Rhone was actually born March 11th, 1952 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Of course, raised in Harlem, but
Mhm.
of course, music was an inspiration to her. And of course, R&B like Ella Fitzgerald and then Aretha Franklin. You can kind of understand why because they're very, very great performers and
Mhm.
entertainers as well. I'm sorry. Of course, she graduated high school and got accepted into the Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. And would graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. Of course, she got a job in banking, but she didn't want to do that. She really wanted to do music, so she would eventually leave for a secretary job with Buddha Records in 1974. She would get a series of promotions over the next 6 years and hold positions at ABC Records and among other places. Eventually, she made her way to Atlantic Records, where she was the director of the National Black Music Marketing.
Mhm.
Uh, she also, of course, helped realign Atlantic's black music business, and of course, she would take on more responsibilities, the A&R and marketing, as she got promoted to senior VP and GM of Atlantic Records. She would manage artists like In Vogue, The System, Levert, Brandy, Yo Yo, and MC Light, to name a few. Under her watch, Billboard magazine would name Atlantic the number one black music destination in 1988. In 1990, she was named the CEO and president of Atlantic's East West Records, becoming the first African American woman to hold a major record no title in that or there. Okay. She was at Atlantic till 1994 when she was hired by to be the chairman and CEO of Electra, Entertainment Group. She's the
Yeah.
first woman and the only African American at the time to hold the dual title in the record industry. Of course, a
Yes.
list of artists she worked with: Missy Elliott, Busta Rhymes, Tracy Chapman, and Fabulous, among others.
So many
Of course,
others.
yes, definitely, definitely. And of course, I can't leave out the Motown and Sony title where she was there. Worked with artists like Lil Wayne, Akon, India.Arie, Travis Scott, 21 Savage, Future, DJ Khaled, among others. I mean, can you that's just legendary. Sylvia Rhone, I mean, wow.
Yes. And currently at Epic Records at the top of that food chain there and all the great things she has going on at Epic. So are you
Wow.
asking me about Sil or
What's that?
are you asking me about Sylvia or
Well, hey, if you've got any information or some stories about her, that would be great. But if not, hey, that's fine.
no, I'm just here to co-sign. She's a genius. I've known Sylvia for a very long time. She's been a friend to me in this business and also just like a regular sister friend to me for many years. And um, I always think that as much as we know about her, we don't know enough about her and her accomplishments and the many relationships she has with some of the most brilliant music creatives, really, at this point in the history of recorded music. I can't say enough good things about her. Um, she is a queen and a king among music, our music leadership, and I'm lucky and proud to call her a friend.
Well, we'll say this. when the biopic gets done of her career, it's going
Yes,
to be incredible.
it is.
Pretty
It
sure
is.
somebody's probably working on that already, but hey, I don't know. But of course, I brought you on this show to talk about you
Oh,
and your, to me, legendary status when it comes to music, in my opinion. Of course, you grew up out west, Bay Area for a part of it, and LA for the other part. Now,
mhm.
what was it like growing up in those two different, kind of, to me, different environments? I would say the Bay Area is definitely a little different than LA. So, kind of explain what it was kind of growing up in both areas.
Yeah, I'm an Oakland native, East Oakland specifically. Um, it's not that much to say about Oakland except that it's the greatest city in the United States of America. And if you don't believe me, ask Dame Lil, you know what I mean? So, of the Portland Trailblazers. So, who's from East Oakland? Eh, You know, I don't know what else to say about it except I miss it. I'm actually going there this week for a couple of speaking engagements that I'm very excited about. It's always good to get home. But I also grew up here where I live in Los Angeles now after double decades plus in New York City, between Manhattan and Brooklyn, and then also did a couple of years at ESPN, working out of the Washington, D.C. Office there. So when I was culture editor at The Undefeated. So if I had to choose the best or the most, I mean, Oakland is always going to be nearest and dearest to my heart. But I must say, I haven't gone to high school here in Los Angeles, being back home near my sister, and when my niece and nephew are home from college, I get to see so much of them. My parents are here. So many of my good girlfriends are here. So I am kind of loving, even though it's been a bit rainy here in Southern California recently. But I am very much loving Los Angeles right now, and it is good to be back home in the great state of California.
I hear you there. Now, I will say that I remember one story that you talked about on your podcast. When you talked about listening to the music of today with,
Mhm.
I believe it was your niece or someone, and they were looking at you like, "Is she really listening to
Yeah.
that?"
Yes, I listen to a lot of music, especially with my nephew, because, um, well, he's my niece is in school back east, but my nephew just graduated from high school last June, and he also is in college, kind of locally. So I see a good bit of him, even sometimes him just texting me saying, "Auntie, can you fix me some food?" Which I'm always happy to do. And he comes over here playing his Young Blue and his uh, Young Boy Never Broke Again, and he likes YG. He's a West Coast boy, so it's always fun. He keeps me up to date on things, and then he likes when I bring him things too. He does.
Okay. All right. All right. So, kind of an exchange of music ideas and
It is.
times.
It is.
All right. So, I want to ask, you know, you're an institution. To me, you're an institution when it comes to music. So, where did you love? Where did your love of music actually come from or start?
I mean, I talk about it a good bit on the podcast, as you mentioned, on Black Girl Songbook, and in my book, Shine Bright, A Very Personal History of Black Women in Pop. I talk about just hearing it at the youngest of ages. Like my mom played a lot of music around the household, and I think also those of us proud members of Gen X, we grew up in the cars with our parents before the era of headphones. So you were listening to music that you didn't necessarily like or know about because your mom or dad or whoever was raising you was in charge of the music. So even though people like the Stylistics and Natalie Cole and the OJs and stuff like that are a bit, but even before my time a little bit, I knew about them and I loved them, the Pointer Sisters and all those things. So I just was listening to certain songs, are very catchy to a little kid's ear. Like say, for example, like the Pointer Sisters, Yes We Can. Like that's like a nursery rhyme. Yes, I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. And then when they start going, Yes, we can. I know we can. Yes, we can. Why can't we? If we want to, yes, we can. And so if you're like 6 years old or something, that sounds like music that's made for you. And then I fell in love with the Jackson Five. I went to my first concert at, I think, for my 7th birthday with my mother and my sister to see the Jackson Five, and Janet Jackson was opening. She was, I don't, a baby. She must have been, I don't know, 6 years old on stage. And so it just got in me. And if you've read my book, or if you haven't, it's like there's a lot of talk about, my childhood is tumultuous, to say the very least. And music was really an escape for me. Songs of the 80s, late 70s, all of the 80s really got me through a lot of tough times. I could think of just listening to Stephanie Mills's version of Home. When I think of home, I think of a place where love's overflowing. And even though that wasn't necessarily every day in my home, the idea of a home like that, it sustained me.
Yeah, wow, that song never gets old. Every time you hear it, it gets like you get like the warm and fuzzy feelings.
Yes,
Yeah. Oh my
absolutely.
goodness. Now, I want to get into, of course, your writing career. Now, before I get into that, I have to say I did read the article, the SZA article. I definitely enjoyed that article. It's got SZA's one of my favorite artists right now. So, yeah, definitely was like, wow. I had to ask you, how did that kind of come to pass, or how did that kind of work out? And did you actually get to kind of shadow her or anything like that while you were doing that article?
Um, did I get to shadow her? I think somewhat. I'm blessed to have a great relationship with the New York Times Magazine. I pitch them things, and sometimes they'll bring things my way. And they knew the kind of things that I was interested in writing about, just based on my book and my show. So the idea was like, do you feel like you would ever want to write about, Solana? And I was like, what? What? Of course. And so I got to actually spend time with her at her home in Malibu. I stayed up there for an afternoon, and um, it's just so enlightening and inspiring and educational to speak with Black women who are at the top of their game and at the zenith of their creativity, or a zenith of their creativity. It's like it just it does something for my brain. It does something for my soul, to talk to women about their work. Like, what are you actually doing, SZA, when you go into the studio? What are your hands upon? What does it feel like when you are recording this song or that song? How are we deciding on producers? Whose opinion do you trust the most? It was just fantastic. And then I was able to go to the New York Times Magazine photo shoot. Um, it was just like fantastic. I interviewed people around her. I spoke, to one of the presidents of Top Dog Entertainment and her label. I spoke to Punch. I spoke to her mom. I just spoke to a bunch of people and did a lot of reporting, research, and it was just great. It was so great to be writing about someone, and then she ends up going #1 for 10 or 11 weeks. It's a historic run at the top of the charts. And I really do believe that when the deluxe drops, it's going to go right back to the top of the charts for her. And I saw her last night, actually. I didn't see her in person, but she was performing here in Los Angeles last night at the Forum. So I was at the show. Man, she's in a space of creativity and production. Like, the way she was running around that stage, she just looks so joyful. She recreates. If you haven't seen the show, please go. I think they're taking some time off, going to Europe for some dates there, but then coming back maybe in the summertime. But the album cover where she's sitting on that diving board, kind of like out over all that water.
Mm-hmm.
She recreates that in such a realistic way for her show that I feel like, and listen, the amount of shows I've been to, I told you I went to my first one when I was 7. So I've been to shows on shows, like literally thousands of shows in my life. I wonder if it's 10,000, I don't know. But last night was a show of shows. It's not that often you're going to get me standing there with my phone down and my hand over my mouth. And that's where I was.
Wow. Wow. I've seen that. I've seen the actual a video of what you were talking about with recreating the album cover, and it's incredibly amazing just to see it. I'm just like, look, wow, how did this, you find yourself trying to figure out things and recreate it in your mind too.
Yes. Like, shout out to the set designer. Where is that person? Somebody needs to do an article on that person. Somebody needs to do a little doc on that person, because let me tell you, it was stunning. You felt like you were with her. There's a lot of risk and there's a lot of peace, sitting out there like that. And you feel like suddenly you're a part of her world. And so it was an amazing show.
Definitely something I've seen the glimpses, and I've known people that have went, and they said it's definitely an amazing experience. Now, of course, we got off on talking about SZA, which I could probably talk about SZA all day long, and the last couple of albums, but I'm not going to do that. But I want to talk about you and your writing and editing experience. I mean, started I believe with the San Francisco Bay Guardian, I believe.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. So how was that first experience actually? San Francisco Bay Guardian. How was that? Kind of getting into the business, of course, of writing.
I mean, that's when I was like a puppy, a kitten in the game. Like I was a child. What was I? I think I was 20 and I was an intern there. I basically had to drop out of college for financial reasons. I had been at UC Berkeley. And let's just say I told a couple of white lies that allowed the Bay Guardian to think that I was still at college. I was still figuring out what I wanted to do with my life at that time. I think I was caught between wanting to be a writer, but also wanting to be a teacher. Also possibly wanting to be like majoring in librarianship studies and going to work in libraries or maybe a museum. And I had taken classes kind of in all those spaces, but nothing intrigued me as much as, or brought me as much satisfaction as writing. So I got up there in the Guardian and they were assigning me all kind of crazy stuff that you assign interns, write the captions and go to the boring events and come back with a summary, or if you're lucky, you get to write the piece. And I loved it, but I didn't love not getting paid. At that time, most internships were not paid. And I just said I had to drop out of school because I didn't have any money. So I was like, I have 2 jobs. And I did at that time. I was working at a department store, and I was working for California Youth Authority, which is essentially juvenile hall in the state of California. Or it was back then, it's called something else now. But I was like, why can't I just be a freelancer? I saw them filing their stories and handing in their invoices. So I was like, I would like to hand in an invoice. And so I worked it out, and I did. And once I started writing for them, then people started seeing my byline, and I started writing for other places. I ended up becoming the music editor at the Bay Guardian's competition, San Francisco Weekly. I was a music editor there, all music too. At the Bay Guardian, I had been writing mostly about Black music, but when I got to the Weekly, I had all music. And this was in the grunge era, the Nirvana era. So I either knew or had to learn about all those kinds of groups, which was great for me because it helped me have more confidence. By the time I got to Billboard and stuff like that, I was able to talk about all kinds of musics. Obviously, my heart and soul is always going to be, R&B and hip hop and pop and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that's my entire knowledge base. So I was able to show that off. But yeah, and then it just kind of grew. That was my first real job at Billboard. A real job with like benefits and meetings and stuff like that. So, and then, oh my God, Quincy Jones is launching a magazine called Vibe. So I was like, what? So I started freelancing for them, and then soon I became music editor there. I went back to school for a while, promoted to editor-in-chief.
Mm-hmm.
The story gets longer as you get older, I will tell you. I went to Time Inc. for a while, and then I finally was tired. And I took off like 4 years from work. I had put my pennies aside, and I finally went back to school, got my bachelor's and my master's at the same time. I'm in my mid-30s around then. I actually, I had a friend, a colleague named Elliot Wilson. And all of a sudden, when I had time off, I realized, is Elliot cute? And then, a year and a half later, I was walking down the aisle, and I've been married to Elliot. My God, it's going on 18 years at this point. He's a journalist himself, the former editor-in-chief of XXL, and he's the chief content officer at Tidal now. So we have a very musical household. But, writing is just central to my life. Music is my life. So.
Dang. Kind of combine the two, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I will say that you did kind of go over a few different things, but, in 1997, you were editor-in-chief, I believe, at Vibe at that time. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were the first African American, the first female editor in history. Editor-in-chief, I should say. Editor-in-chief.
Woman editor-in-chief of a national music magazine. I think it is.
Yes. Yes. So in essence, you are history as well.
It's too wild. It's too wild. It doesn't seem like it when you're doing it. When you're doing it, it just seems like you have to go to work and get things done and be creative, make things happen. But, when you get some perspective on the situation, I do say to myself, like, one, wow, how's that even possible that it was like the 90s and I was the first, like, not even the first Black woman, just the first woman, like, of a national music magazine? Come on, man. It took too long, But then at the same time, I'm like, look at me. I guess I did that.
Yeah, definitely. And, of course, you deserve to be, your flowers from anyone that's listening or watching. They definitely need to give you your flowers and understand the magnitude of the person that they're actually listening to be honest.
I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Now, I do want to also switch over to your podcast, Black Girl Songbook. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I was listening to the Jamel Hill podcast, so I wasn't aware of your podcast yet. Okay. So I'm listening to the show, and I'm like, okay, podcast, music. Okay, let me go ahead and check this out. So I checked it out. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, let me go ahead and check all these other episodes out that I missed so I can kind of catch up. I'm like, wow, I'm getting music education. I found myself, I had a pen in hand. I'm writing down notes. I'm like,
I love to hear
this happened from there. Wow. I'm like, yeah, so I'm like, I became an instant fan of the podcast, and I was definitely loving it. But how did that kind of come about, the podcast?
Well, first of all, shout out to Jamel. We became, we were colleagues at ESPN, and then you go from being colleagues to friends. And so I love and appreciate Jamel and everything she's doing. She also has a great book out. And obviously, like you said, her podcast is off the chain. So I just always want to give a virtual hug to Jamel. As much as I love her, we don't see each other enough. So, and we're both right here in California. My podcast came about when I finished my book, Shine Bright, A Very Personal History of Black Women in Pop. I was like, okay, but now what? There's still so many more stories to tell. And what Shine Bright did for me was reinforce to myself that my story was very important also. And so I was like, where can I do this? What can I do? And I said, I think I should try to do a podcast. I had done something small and homemade at the very beginning, kind of the podcast era. I did a podcast with my husband called Relationship Goals. So I kind of knew the mechanics of it, but I didn't necessarily know how to produce a deeply reported storytelling show. So I did my research and I realized I did not want to do it by myself. I wanted to have people around me who wanted to create the kind of thing that I wanted to create. And I wanted to work with people who understood my passion and my rigorous nature about music. And so, shout out to The Ringer and to Spotify for believing in the pitch, like off the rip. It was so great. I have colleagues there. And then I was able to, Trudy, who's now at Trudy Joseph, who's now at Apple, but Trudy left ESPN to come work on Black Girl Songbook. And Trudy and I had worked together at ESPN. Taj Rani, who I worked together at Vibe, she had been an intern at Vibe when I was EIC at Vibe. And Taj has worked for all the great places, including LeBron's company. And Taj came on board as a story consultant. Just so many great people that help make Black Girl Songbook what it is, because it's important. As we say, every episode of Black Girl Songbook, it is the place and the space where Black women in music receive the credit that we are due. And man, it's the joy of my life. It's the joy of my life. Between Songbook and Shine Bright, man, it's just been a great couple of years. Like this creative space that I'm in right now, it feels really, really good.
Yeah. Honestly, I thank you for giving us that gift of Black Girl Songbook. I mean, I still remember the episode you had Ella May on there. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Ella May is such a fave of mine. Like she has all these hits, right? Big hits. But I still feel like people don't know her. I feel like she needs to be lifted up more. I'm trying to think of where I was and I actually met her in person. It was actually at Rock Nation Brunch. And I saw Mustard there. And he brought her over. And I just want to say for everybody, if you think that she's pretty from seeing her on screen, seeing her in person, that woman, woo! And just kind of not just beautiful, but like emits this kind of very chill and gracious aura about her, and the cheekbones and the outfits, and she just is she was just very kind. So it was wonderful to meet her in person also recently.
Nice. But, one thing I will ask you as well, what do you feel like you kind of get more or get differently from podcasting than you get from writing per se?
That's such a good question. I mean, my podcast some of them are very much scripted. Some of them I'm reading or ad-libbing off of what I'm actually reading because it's reported. It's not just like my memories. Like, just like I just talked about Ella May, it wouldn't be that. There's a little of that on my show, but there's also a bunch of like, Ella May was born on this day and that day. She did this. She was raised here. She got her start that way. Oh my God, she worked with Mustard. This is how she came to be. Yada, yada, yada. This organization said this about her on this day. The internet's responded to her like this. So you know what I mean? It's like a reported piece. So in some ways, the pod and my writing are similar. But the thing that makes it different is talking is a lot. Like I spent a career really writing or editing and writing at the same time. And occasionally, you know, in the days of MTV and stuff, you know, they call and say, hey, this thing is happening. Could you come and speak about this? And then you go over there and you give your opinion for an hour and you take your little self back to work. I'm grateful for all those moments. It really did help me get ready for podcasting. I just didn't know that. But it wasn't as exhausting as podcasting. Podcasting to me, like, this is easier because you're the host with most of the responsibility. But when you're the producer and host and creator, there's all the background stuff that the listeners never see. There's the booking, the reporting. Then you have to shoot, you have to record. I had to learn all that tech stuff, which was fun to learn, but it was still a little, you know, it's still a learning curve.
Right.
Then you got to go back and do the pickups because you messed up over here a little bit, you messed up over here a little bit. And then my podcast had music. You had to make sure you chose the right music to illustrate your points. Then let's get the social media stuff together to help promote it. Like, love all of it. Love all of it. Blessed to be, you know, busy doing work that I love. But let's not act like it's not. It's not all, you know what I mean, a walk through the daisies. No, it is not. The return on it is amazing. And my speaking has become so much more confident. I think even as an editor in chief, you have to speak with a lot of confidence and, hey, everyone, this is what we have going on today. These are the responsibilities. This is what we're doing. Does anyone have any ideas for me or questions? Like, you have to speak to the room and you get used to that. And I'm good at that. But there's still something different about speaking into a microphone for an hour or an hour and a half straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
definitely. I know. Definitely. Yeah. With all the different things we were talking about, producing, booking, all those different things, social media. Yeah, I am it and it is me. So I totally.
We are the same, right? When people say we are not the same, it's like, no, we are the same.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Now, of course, it would not be right if I did not talk about your book. Of course, Shine Bright. Now, for those that aren't aware, can you kind of tell them about the book?
Shine Bright is a merge of biography and memoir. It is a cultural history of the under-celebrated and under-interrogated Black women in music, all the way as far back as Ella Fitzgerald and even further, all the way up to now. I think I kind of stopped with Janet, Beyonce, and Mariah. But I talk about everybody from Aretha Franklin to Marilyn McCoo to a lot of people haven't heard of the ska/reggae star Millie Small, who I give credit. I give her credit for pretty much making people even begin to understand reggae in global terms. She was signed to Island Records even before Bob Marley. So, talking about people like that, talking about Stephanie Mills, Jody Watley, Denise Williams, going into their stories and also telling my story. As I say, it's a merge of biography, cultural history, and memoir. And I talk about my journey from even before the San Francisco Bay Guardian, writing for school papers, dealing with my tumultuous childhood, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, and really asking myself why, in fact, does music mean so much to me, and why has it always? And why does it mean so much to these women who are creating it, or who are producing it, singing it, vocally arranging it, and just trying to put all of it together. And it really does work. It really came out nicely. I think, as a matter of fact, Pitchfork named Shine Bright the best music book of 2022. So I tried to get in there and do that.
Well, we'll say this. If you haven't got it already, go and get Shine Bright. If you haven't listened already, listen to Black Girl Songbook. I'm going to ask, I didn't ask, is there a new season on the way, potentially?
Let's just say things are in motion. Let's just say things are in motion. Let's say announcement forthcoming.
There we go. There we go. We'll roll with that one. But definitely I want to thank you for coming on. But of course, with every show, I have a little bit of a game at the end.
Okay.
Now, this isn't like Jamel's game. There
Okay.
is a couple, and it's so, and in a sense, it is. There's two answers to go along with it. You got to make one choice, and there's five questions.
Okay.
Now, I did a little bit of kind of a mixture of a few different things. Did a lot of music mixture, but hey, we'll go from there. Are
All
you
right.
ready?
Okay.
All right. The first one's more about writing, but editing or writing, which one did you kind of enjoy more?
Oh, so you starting out with the hard questions.
I thought you honestly would say writing first, but hey.
It's 49-51 writing.
All right.
It's very close.
Now, now I do have a couple different versions of songs. You have "You Are Everything" with Mary J. Blige, or the Stylistics "You Are Everything." Which one would you say is the one version you like better?
Why are you asking me these impossible questions? I'm gonna go Mary.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go a little different styles here. "I Will Always Love You" either by Dolly Parton or "I Will Always Love You" by Whitney Houston.
I think Dolly Parton has said she likes Whitney Houston's version better. We all like Whitney Houston's version better. We love Dolly Parton. She wrote the hell out of that song. You know, she's a dynamic and amazing creative, a legend. But I'm gonna go with Whitney Houston on that song.
All right, all right. Now we've got "Killing Me Softly" with by Lauren Hill and the Fugees,
Lauren,
or
don't
"Killing Me
need
Softly" by
Lauren. Love Roberta Flack, but Lauren.
All right, and let's see. I've got a Bay Area one. We go E40. Are we going too short?
I have to go with East Oakland, and that would be Todd Too Short Shaw. Absolutely. Life
All
is too
right.
short not to. Yes.
Right. Well, that is five questions, two answers, and one choice. And definitely want to thank you again for kind of telling us about your life, telling us about different things going on, and we wanted to give you your flowers here on touring the AFC South. This is
I love
Women's
it.
History Month. We're celebrating Black women. We celebrate Black women all month. Only Black women have been guests on this show for the month of March.
I love
That's
that.
the way I had to do it, and the way I wanted to do it. This is the second year in a row actually doing this. So
I love this so much. But I have a question for you.
go ahead.
Isn't this more normally a sports podcast?
It is. But I actually during the month of March, I kind of scrap all of that because I'm
Mm.
like, well, hey, you know, Black women are more important than the sports podcast, in my
Well, I mean, yes, I received that.
opinion.
But at the same time, I feel like I would like give me a good sports question. But don't take me to college. Keep me in pros.
Okay, all right. Let's
Mhm.
see. All right, as far as the Boston Celtics,
What about
okay,
them?
what do you think? Do you take Boston Celtics right now in the East, or you're going to take the field when it comes to the East? They've got Milwaukee, they've got Philadelphia out there, they've got a few other teams that are out there that could take the East over them.
Okay, first of all, that's just not true. I'm wondering if this is a trick question because I feel like we follow each other in these tweets, and you see and you know that the Celtics are my favorite team, and Jason Tatum is my favorite current active player.
I've
And
done my
we are
homework.
not going just to the top of the Eastern Conference. We're winning the championship this year.
Oh, okay, calling the shot.
Oh, I am.
Okay.
I am. I think that no, there's no question. There's no question. And this is a tough year. We should all remember how it started out for the Boston Celtics. The whole situation with the
Yeah.
coach. Very, very bumpy start to a season. Frankly, they should have won last year. But bumpy start to the season. But look how they have prevailed and excelled. And we would like that home, that what do you call that top seed, so we can have that
Yep.
home field advantage
Home
and
court
all of that.
advantage. Yeah.
But let me tell you something. Even without The ring is going back. The banner's going back to Boston Garden. It sure is. Yes.
Okay.
You asked me that on purpose.
Right.
You know I love Boston.
I did ask you that on purpose.
Okay, good. I'm glad I got my one sports question off. That was a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I knew you were going to think about that one, especially with Boston.
Yes. Kevin Garnett is my favorite retired player, and Magic Johnson is my favorite player all time.
Okay. All right. Versatile, both versatile players, both passionate players, and
Yes.
of course, different demeanors on the court, of course, obviously, but yeah, Magic with the smile, and Kevin Garnett with the the frown, the mean mug the entire way, yelling out anything is possible, and all those different things.
Oh my god! Oh my god! See, some days I do miss working at ESPN. I do. Some days I miss working at ESPN.
Totally understand. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. Now, I want to tell everyone where they can find you on social media and anything that you're working on that they may want to go check out. Of course, you want to go check out the SZA article, the New York Times. That is a very, very good article. I have to say, I read it from beginning to end. Very, very good.
Yes, definitely. Just Google my name and SZA, and you should be able to find my story about SZA. It just came out like last month. You can always find me really across all social at Danyel. My name is Danyel Smith, and it's Danyel Smith. But I'm usually Danyel, Danamo at Twitter. Twitter, Instagram, I'm Danyel. You can also find me at the new social media platforms, Spoutable, C-Boozy's platform. I'm over there. Also join me. You can find my book at all the places that you would normally find it, from Amazon on down. Please utilize your independent bookstores, though. If you can order from them or fall through, it's probably right there at your independent bookstore. And I'm trying to think of what else is going on with me. Oh, and also my the audiobook. I narrate. So if you want to hear more of this mouth going and reading my work, it was the experience of a lifetime to narrate my own book. So please just go on your phone right now to Audible or wherever you get your audiobooks from, and you can hear more of me.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again. I want to thank everyone for listening. Of course, my name is Mike Patton. You can find me on Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton 82. Of course, on Instagram is at the THA_general_MP. I want to thank you all for listening. Of course, Touring the AFC South can be found on all listening platforms. And you can find this show, the visual version, on YouTube. Of course, usually you see commercials, but this episode, we would roll it all the way through. So I want to thank everyone for listening and tuning in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.